And let's continue to talk about King Goodwill Zwelithini and his take on politics. We're joined now by political analyst Xolani Dube. Mr. Dube, what do you think? Mr. Hau Mbata painting the late king as something of a peacemaker, especially in his decision not to vote. He really didn't want his people divided along IFP versus ANC lines.
Look, I think King Goodwill Zwelithini is a king that was never given an opportunity to express his goodwill to the South Africans. And remember that in his inauguration, there was MC Botha, who said some very hostile and instructions to him. And is a king that has pined himself under different lobby groups in our society. Hence, I am saying he's a king that never able to express his goodwill to the South Africans.
And he was often seen as linked to the IFP. In fact, he was part of Inkatha Yesizwe, formed by his great-grandfather. So tell us about that distinction and the relationship between that grouping and then Inkatha.
Look, we have to look at the issue of the Zulu history, not from the post-modernism political squabbles. We have to look at it in the way it is. Inkatha Yesizwe was a traditional institution within the royal household, because remember that within the royal household, there is a coil known as Inkatha, is a sacred coil that binds what we call it the Zulu nation. And so from there, they came with the concept of saying, beyond that, the Zulu nation needs to be united. Hence, they came with what we call it Inkatha Yesizwe. And then, through the evolution of our politics, that concept was hijacked for political expediency. And so that's where things started to really put the royal household in a very awkward position in the institution of governance in our country. But if you remember very well that also Nkosi Mhlabuzime Maphumulo, who was a leader of Inala Party, a party that was very hostile to the apartheid government, and that party on the other side was also very cozy with King Goodwill Zwelithini, and even himself, to a certain extent, was so warm to that party. And so it would be very naive of us to claim that he was someone who was really linked to the IFP. Possible is the fact that he was under pressure. And if you remember the politics of KwaZulu-Natal government and his well-being in terms of salary, that once he was threatened that he won't get his full salary of 21,000, he will be given 8 million, because they were cracking whip to say, look, if you are not going to be on our side, we are going to go hungry, and you are not going to have this monarchy. And the history tells us also that the monarchy in KwaZulu-Natal once was under threat because of a particular political maneuvering in this province. And so, as I'm saying, is a king that never had peace, is a king that was supposed to maneuver a lot of intricacies of politics, as well of royal household politics in KwaZulu-Natal. Hence, I am saying is a king that never really expressed his goodwill to the people of KwaZulu-Natal and in South Africa.
All right, well, let's look at some turbulence even more recently, in post-democracy. In recent times, the royal house threatened succession in 2017. That was after the former President Kgalema Motlante's independent panel calling for the Ingonyama Trust to be changed or abolished. And he said that it is nothing more than a rent-seeking front. Now, the king was the sole trustee, the sole appointer of the board of that trust, owning a huge swath of land. Was that a moment of crisis?
I don't think so. It depends on the lens that you are using, because we have to understand that pre-colonialism, the land was belonging to kings. And as I said, the politics of modernity brought us the party politics and so forth. And so you have to also fully appreciate that the royal household is a political institution. And as a political institution, it's got its own agenda, it's got its own interest. And so the fraction that you saw, or the confrontation that we witnessed, it was about protecting his interest in the political terrain. I don't think that there was nothing really sinister if he was protecting his interest. But what we can say is that Ingonyama Trust needed to be owned by the Zulu people, and it needs to be democratized, and it needs to be opened up, and we need to know more about what is going on in that Ingonyama Trust. I think that the only thing that we can really deal with here, because if we do a comparative analysis, in Northwest, there is Royal Bafokeng who owns mine and so forth, and they claim others that they are benefiting, others they are saying they are not benefiting. And I think we need really to look at the modalities on how to govern or how to do the administration of that Ingonyama Trust.
Yeah. And another controversial issue, I understand, was the King's tax.
As I'm saying, there were secret negotiations during CODESA. Concessions were made. And so when the political elite closed doors and then they reached consensus and they make concessions amongst themselves, and when those concessions are no longer to a certain extent augur well with a particular party, they tend to go out and make the politics of spectacle, and then they draw us in their differences. And so I think even there, we need really to understand what was agreed in the CODESA that really emanated to have these concessions that were made around the Zulu royal household before we can make an informed what we call it, commentary or analysis or conclusions.
All right, well, thank you for what you have given us, political analyst Xolani Dube.